All right, so we'll be starting the session. So, good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this special session Youth for Mental Health Thriving, Not Just Surviving. On behalf of Bits Embryo, Summer Talks, and Youth for Mental Health, I am very delighted to welcome all of you. In a world that constantly demands performance, productivity, and perfection, conversations around mental health have never been more important. And today's discussion is not merely about coping with challenges, it is about understanding how young people can truly thrive. So, we are very honored to have with us an incredible panel of experts and advocates who have dedicated their work to supporting mental well being and empowering young individuals. So, Mr. Hitesh Samwal is the founder and CEO of Youth for Mental Health and a lived experience expert. Through his work and personal journey, he has inspired countless individuals to approach mental health with courage, empathy, and hope. Ms. Kunwar Inayat is a psychologist who works closely with individuals navigating emotional and psychological challenges. Her expertise provides valuable insights into building resilience and maintaining well being. Ms. Tia Sharma is a psychologist as well, passionate about helping young people understand themselves better, develop healthy coping mechanisms, and create fulfilling lives. Thank you all for joining us today. Now we'll be handing over the session to you three. Please go on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction, Agrima. Hi, everyone. Once again, this is Hitesh, and I have my colleagues here, which is Inayat and Tia. Just to kickstart this, first of all, thanks to the team, Bits Embryo, for putting all of this together and organizing this session. Just to mention at the beginning, conversations around mental health at times can be overwhelming. So at any point you feel like any part of the session feels overwhelming or it feels a lot to take in right now, feel free to take a step back and rejoin the session at your own pace. If you would like to, feel free to be on your videos, or otherwise we are good on audios as well. What I'll do, I'll just share a bit of my own experiences with mental health and how did we came up with Youth for Mental Health, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues here who are going to talk more about the kind of challenges students are facing currently in terms of their own mental health and what kind of support systems can be accessed by them. And we also have certain resources that we would be happy to talk about in case anyone here is kind of thinking to seek support for themselves or someone around them. Without any further delay, this is just to share a little bit of my own journey, because that will, I think, kind of set the context for the session as well. I was myself pursuing economic honors in University of Delhi, and what I observed that I am kind of feeling more anxious in comparison to my other peers, or the kind of things they're able to navigate by themselves. I am usually getting more overwhelmed or way more anxious than them. Initially, I was not very much aware that whatever I'm feeling, what it is, or what to do with those feelings and emotions, and I felt kind of extremely lost, and that was having a huge impact on my own academics or on my personal or professional friends in a way. After experiencing all of those in a way emotions or situations for a series of months, I decided to seek support for myself and got in touch with some mental health professional, and that's when I discovered about mental health, or what it's like seeking support or being therapy, or being seeking professional support for your own mental health. And over the course of 1 year, as I got better, I started thinking about many more students would be experiencing such distress being in a college, and they would not be able to talk about it because of the stigma, or may not be aware about how to go about it, or may not be able to access the support. And that's when I decided that I would like to kickstart a university college student focused mental health organization. And that's when Youth for Mental Health came to the picture, where our only goal is to sensitize as many students as possible across the country or beyond India, and ensure that young people feel supported, or they have a space to talk about mental health. And if they are in need of any kind of support, they're able to access free of cost or low cost resources for themselves. So that's the kind of work we are doing, and these sessions are in a way designed to sensitize students like yours about the mental health, or what kind of stresses students are facing, and whatever feels resonating for the students, we are happy to build more conversations on that. And lastly, as I was saying, what kind of support systems are available for students to reach out to. What we have observed in our work that, and what we have also looking at the latest reports, India has one of the largest population of students facing mental health distress, and a large number of students are not able to seek support for different reasons that my colleagues are going to talk more about. And that's where these conversations become paramount in terms of how do we go about such situations, how do we navigate, and how can we go about thriving instead of surviving. And coming to the topic and concluding my note to the session, what I felt that because of different reasons, because of the distress that we are navigating, at times we are surviving the situation in a way, but we wanted to look at the situation in a more holistic way. That by thriving, we don't mean that okay, let's not pay attention to what we are navigating, or despite of what we are navigating, let's continue to do better. But by thriving, our concept at YMH is around creating a holistic space where thriving means taking care of yourself, prioritizing your mental health, and then going about the kind of things you are trying to achieve at the academics front, personal front, or professional front. So we are going to delve a little more into this in the next 30 to 40 minutes, and happy to answer any of the questions at the end. And that's what we want to talk about it in today's time, which is getting more and more competitive, and there is a lot of more things happening in the field, be it the digital front, AI, or a lot of other areas, which is adding to that distress in a way, or the situations at the job market. And in these competitive times, how do we go about creating these holistic spaces for ourselves, where we are, of course, trying to do better and better, but at the same time, we're able to take care of ourselves and our own mental health or our emotions. So that's a little bit of context setting, a little bit of the journey that YMH had so far. I'm going to now invite the both of the psychologists that we have here, Kuwar Inayat and Tia Sharma, to take this forward, and I'm going to add a little bit more at the end of the conversation as well. But thank you for listening to my bit. Over to Inayat.
Yes. Should
You can check. Is that audible?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're absolutely audible.
Okay, amazing. We have a slide deck prepared, so would it be possible for Tia to share that?
Yeah, sure. I request Akshat to stop the screen share and give Ms. Tia the sharing rights if possible. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's visible. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so before. Yes, thank you, Hitesh, for sharing your story. I think listening to Hitesh, we could recognize what emotional struggles can look like when they become visible. But I think I would like to spend the next few minutes talking about the struggles that aren't immediately visible. And before we begin, I would like to do a very quick check in, and I would request all of you to uh, engage in the session as much as you can. There are a few questions that we have prepared, and it would be great if you can answer and we would really love if the session is as interactive as possible. So, next slide, please. Yes. Okay, so we can begin with a very quick check-in to just set up the context for the session. So, how many of you have thought of one of these things in the past few months or even past few days? Things like, I'm just tired, I'll deal with it after my exams, everyone else seems to be handling this better, my problems aren't serious enough to talk about, or I just need to get through this semester. Giving you a moment to just think, reflect, and see if you resonate. Okay. Thank you for answering. And the rest of you who do not want to answer, maybe you can just think and, yeah, let us know in the chat box. Um, and thank you for the four of you who have raised your hands. And it's important because it's important to recognize that emotional distress, it does not always arrive dramatically. So it can show up as disguised as productivity, ambition, responsibility, or simply having to be busy all the time. So, today we would be talking about mental health as something that not only concerns people who are struggling visibly, but also about emotional experiences that many high achieving students quietly carry every day. Next slide, please. the reality of being a student. Yes, thank you. Okay, another quick poll. Can you raise your hand if you've opened your laptop recently to do one of your assignments and somehow you ended up juggling 6 tabs, 3 deadlines, subgroups, an existential crisis somewhere there? Thank you. So clearly, being a student today is not just about academics, right? So you're managing your coursework, you're managing projects, placements, friendships, relationships, family expectations, uncertainty about the future, and at the same time, we're trying to figure out who you really are and what kind of life you want. And often we're trying to do all of this while we're comparing ourselves to the people who seem to have everything sorted out. So the student life today is what we like to define not only as intellectually demanding, but also emotionally demanding. And many students they underestimate how much emotional energy they're spending every single day to deal with all these life situations at once. Next slide, please. Right, the achievement trap. This is one of the terms you have come up with recently. Cool. Another question. Quick show of hands. How many of you have felt good about yourselves after you've received a good grade, or you've gotten selected for something, or after you've secured an internship or achieved any other life goal? Okay. And another. And how many of you have ever felt significantly worse about yourself after a rejection, a lower grade, or not getting an opportunity that you wanted? Right. And this here is interesting, right? Because what this tells us is that sometimes our self-worth it becomes connected to our outcomes. And because a lot of us are have grown up receiving the appreciations for our achievements. It might be good grades, it might be when you're winning a competition, it might be the leadership positions that you're secured, and or just the placements that you're getting. And over time something very subtle happens, so we might end up not asking who am I, but we can eventually start asking more regularly what have I achieved lately. And when self-worth becomes tied to the performance, every setback that you receive, that you get in life, it starts feeling very personal. So a poor grade won't just remain a poor grade. It may become a thought that says, oh, maybe I'm not smart enough. Oh, maybe I don't belong here. And the problem is not the ambition. Ambition, of course, is healthy, right? But the problem is believing that our value, it rises and falls with our achievements. Because if success is the only place where your confidence lives, eventually every setback will start feeling like a threat to your identity. We work with a lot of young people at Youth for Mental Health, and I've seen this conversation happening a lot. And this is something that Hitesh also told me when I was starting earlier in my career, that you are a person who achieves things, but you are not your achievements. And there, I think, lies a very big difference. That I think all of us should take some time to acknowledge and recognize. Next slide, please. Okay. Next up is the fear that nobody openly talks about, is the fear of falling behind. So a lot of people they often assume that students are afraid of failure, but I think what we've come to realize that now the students are most afraid of falling behind. Okay, so another question your way. How many of you have recently opened LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp groups, and after seeing someone's achievements, you have immediately started questioning your own progress? Ki, oh, this person has secured an internship. What will I do? Oh, am I even doing something with my life? Right. So because I feel we have all done it, I have done it. I'm sure a lot of us here has done it. And you open these all these platforms and someone has launched their startup, someone has gotten admission abroad, someone has published their research, and then you're left wondering, am I doing enough, am I falling behind, what if everyone else figures it out before I do? And the challenge here is not the comparison itself, because comparison has always existed, it has always traditionally existed. But the challenge is that today we are constantly exposed to everyone's highlights. So we are comparing our entire lives to someone else's best moments. And that's a comparison we'll almost never win. So the next time you find yourself comparing to someone on LinkedIn, just maybe sit back and ask that, am I learning from this person or am I attacking myself with their success? Because one thing will help you grow, but the other will simply, I think, make you suffer a bit more. Next slide, please. Right. I think you skipped a slide. Next slide. Next slide. Cool. Okay. How many of you have heard of imposter syndrome here? Would anyone like to quickly type in the chat box what they think is imposter syndrome? You can even unmute yourself and, yeah, just let me know.
If I am not wrong, it I think it means that feeling that you are not the thing that you have been rewarded with, you do not deserve it.
Right. Anyone else?
Basically, a self-sabotage thing where you just believe that you don't deserve anything more than what you're getting because you just have low self-worth.
Right. Because you have low self worth or some other reasons. But yes, I think you're almost right. And I think this has been highlighted as another very common thing that is coming up in young people. We sit in these in our classrooms, in our labs, or when you're preparing for placements and you're thinking, oh, everyone else seems to know what they're doing except me. Um, and what the funny thing is that if we could read each other's mind, we'd probably discover that half the room is thinking the same exact thing. And imposter syndrome, the feeling that, oh, I don't belong here, it often affects capable people, not because they lack ability, but because they're constantly noticing what they don't know. And in addition to that comes uncertainty. So, next slide, please. Next slide. Uncertainty, yes. Um, and with imposter syndrome clubbed with uncertainty, a lot of thoughts further come up, like, oh, I don't know what I'll do what once I graduate. What if all the plans I have, they don't pan out the way I want them to pan out? What if I end up making the wrong choices? But again, uncertainty is not a sign that you're failing. It can be just taken as a sign that you're growing. And our goal should not be to eliminate uncertainty, but the goal is to become comfortable taking the next step, even when we do not have the complete certainty. Next slide, please. Okay, let's just decode these few terms that we hear out loud a lot. That's stress, anxiety, and burnout. So, stress is just like, oh, I have a lot to do. It could be an exam, it could be a deadline, it could be a project. And surprisingly, all stress is not bad. There's also positive stress that helps you motivate, that helps you perform and focus. Then comes anxiety. Anxiety is a word that is now very common, very trendy on our Instagrams, and it sounds more like, what if something goes wrong? So our mind would keep traveling into the future. If we would replay these possibilities, we keep imagining the outcomes, and we often struggle to switch it off. And burnout is different from both stress and anxiety. So burnout happens when stress continues but recovery doesn't kick in. So stress says, oh, I have much to do, but burnout would say, I don't have anything left to give. And that is when you would feel emotionally exhausted, detached, and unmotivated. So much so that things that you once liked, like playing guitar, playing football, all of those things, they stop feeling meaningful. And then to further up the ladder comes the mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety disorders that can significantly affect daily functioning and may require professional support. But the important thing to remember here is, next slide, yes. Yes, the important thing to remember, it's okay. The important thing to remember here is that you do not need a diagnosis before paying attention to your mental health. That is, you do not have to wait for things to become severe before seeking support. Quickly talking about the four emotional experiences again that students rarely talk about. The first is called the loneliness of being fine. So you may have friends, you may have classmates, group chats, but you may still feel emotionally unseen. And it's not because people around you, your friends, don't care, but it's because even with the best intentions, a lot of times our peers, they don't know how to provide support. A research study by Ashoka says that college students, they reach out to their peers the first whenever they're going through some emotional distress. But through our research, through our programs, we have found out that these peers are not trained enough to provide the right kind of support. So that is the loneliness of being fine when you can't really open up to your friends, or even when you do not get this required support, so you just pretend, oh, I'm fine. You know how you would answer the question, how are you? I'm fine. The second is the emotional postponement. I think it's very, very common now. When the students, they become experts at saying that I'll deal with this after my exams, after my placement, after my graduation. But emotions, they don't simply disappear because they are postponed. What they do is they accumulate, and the burnout that we were talking about earlier, so it's not, burnout is not always caused by working too much. It can also be caused by carrying unprocessed emotions for too long. The third is the comparative suffering, something on the lines of that we've already talked about earlier. So a lot of students tell themselves that my problems aren't serious enough, other people have it worse, and because of that, they never reach out for support. Pain is not a competition. You do not have to reach a breaking point before you deserve support. And the fourth is living life as a checklist. So, oh, I have to do these assignments, quiz, projects, internships, graduation. And a lot of us, we become so focused on the next milestone that we stop experiencing the present moment. And when life starts feeling like a checklist, then something that's actually worth living, I think that's a sign that we should really stop and pause and breathe. Right. Next slide, please. Early warning signs that students often ignore. Okay, just a quick question. If your phone battery is at 10%, would you wait for it to completely switch off before charging it? No, right? Like you would immediately plug in the charger as soon as possible, right? But that is exactly how many of my laptop battery is low. Such a funny thing. Can I get a charger? Yes. Yes, probably not, right? But that's exactly how we find ourselves treating ourselves, right? Mental health challenges, they don't always shout, but they start by the small whispers. So some of the warning signs can include feeling emotionally numb rather than sad, constant irritability, difficulty concentrating despite working very hard, feeling guilty while resting, losing interest in things that you once enjoyed, persistent self criticism, pulling away from the people you care about or for the people that care about you, and feeling exhausted all the time. And these signs, they do not mean mental illness in any way, directly at least, but we can think of them as these emotional notifications, and like your mind's way of saying, oh, that something here needs attention. that I need to pause and pay attention to something that is not feeling right. And what can you, next slide, please? Right. I think Tia will be covering the topic about the practical tips. But before that, I would like to leave you all with a small reflection exercise. Just take 20 seconds and think that if nobody was grading you, if nobody was ranking you, if nobody was comparing you to anyone or evaluating you, what would well being then look like for you? And I think while you think of that, Tia would be coming in and yeah, taking you all through the practical tips. Thank you.
Okay. So I hope you all now have a fair share of understanding on how some level of awareness on how students generally face stress, burnout, anxiety, and all the other things that Inayat talked about. So awareness is definitely step one, but most of the students, they know they are stressed but don't know how to recover from it. So definitely awareness is important, but to be followed by is the practical tips section that I'm going to be covered, and I think this is important for you all to understand as well as remember that awareness alone is not enough and you need to act upon it. I think that was a great example that if your phone's battery is low, then you won't wait for it to completely get out of charging, right? So mental health definitely improves when people experience certain level of belongingness, emotional safety, support, connection, validation, and access to help. This, of course, means that you need to have a safe space or certain people to talk to or friends, but it is not always about other people. The connection, the support, the belongingness can also come from other tangible things in life. If it's your work or a passion project that you are focusing on, or your family or your house, and anything else that provides that level of comfort to you. So since all of us here have been trying to build a youth friendly mental health ecosystem, I think we have figured out a few steps on how we can do that. So first of all, in a youth friendly mental health ecosystem, seeking help is normalized, and nobody should be judged if they want to seek help. Students feel heard, not judged. Again, it does not need to be stigmatized or stereotyped. Emotional struggles are not treated as a weakness. Your struggles are a part of your life but not your entire life, so definitely they should not be treated as a sign of weakness or a sign that you are lower as compared to other peers of yours. Support is accessible and peer support is encouraged. So all of these are certain things that your mental health ecosystem or you can build around yourself to make it youth friendly or to make it mental health friendly. Then moving ahead, what can you actually do on an individual level for yourself if you think you are facing some of the signs and symptoms that Inayat shared earlier? First of all, you can schedule your recovery. There are certain easy ways. Of course, it sounds like a cliche, but these are the things that will help you at least temporarily to sort of reduce the mental stress level. Exercise definitely is helpful. It sounds like it's a very simple thing to do, but it definitely will help you because when you exercise, certain endorphins are released in your body. So music, walks, friends, all of these things work on the same principle that internally biologically they do help you reduce stress. So you can plan out on these things if you feel like you need an instant break from what you are thinking constantly about. Then build an identity beyond achievement. Particularly for students, a lot of times we in the system tend to judge students on the basis of their CGPA or the basis of their grades and what percentages they are securing. But your identity needs to be beyond academic achievement. You can just have anything else in your life that you can think about and plan on. For example, a hobby or something you are passionate about, which is not related to your academics or your CGPA directly. So definitely taking up that one side thing to do, that one hobby to do, will help you out. Then talk earlier. Support works best early and not only during crisis. This is a very important point. A lot of students think that we'll only try to talk to someone when we hit the rock bottom, but that will not do any good to you. So support works best if it is you are aware about it at an early stage and you do something about it at an early stage. Precaution is always better than cure. So always figure out if there are certain early symptoms and early signs that you can spot. Any changes in your sleep, in your appetite, sudden mood changes, if you feel like your concentration is deteriorating, if you feel like your focus is shifting a lot, these are all very mild symptoms you will notice. And these, you'll feel like these are phases, but you will see that these only come when you are under a lot of stress or under a lot of difficulties. So try to take care of yourself during that period of time. So this is just a trick that we try to use with patients as well as with other clients who come in and say that they're not feeling emotionally well. This is just to shift their attention towards their emotion, to have some sort of a psychological insight. It's called an emotional check-in. So it just goes with asking yourself three different questions. What am I feeling right now? What is draining me? And what do I need today? A lot of times, if there is a severe discomfort that the client or the patient is facing, they will not be able to answer these questions. So answering these questions are definitely a sign of a healthy mental well-being and a healthy emotional well-being as of now. So if you think that you can answer these questions for yourself right now, it means that you are in a good headspace. And if you feel that there is some sort of a difficulty, then you should sit down with your thoughts for a short period of time and try to name these emotions, because they will help you regulate these emotions further and give you some sort of a psychological insight in your mind. Then there are some micro recovery habits that you can use. They definitely will give you a lot of support, not just temporarily, but also in the long run. Because burnout recovery cannot be reserved only for vacations. So you cannot really just say that, until and unless I'll completely shut off, then I'll take a 2-day break to revive. That works for some people, but it's generally not a healthy practice that we advise you to do. So burnout recovery should be taken care of right from the beginning, and you can inculcate this within your daily habits. That's what we call as micro recovery habits. So you can use them in your daily life. Again, a cliche, but 7 to 8 hours of sleep is really important. Some sort of a movement in your life, in your daily lifestyle, be it walking, be it dancing, yoga, whatever works for you. Some people like to play sports, some people just like to walk. So definitely some sort of movement should be involved in your daily life. Rest without guilt. When you're resting, do not ever feel like I'm wasting time, or this is unproductive, or this is something that I should not do. When you're resting, take out some time to just be with your thoughts and not think about uh, external worldly things like work or studies or the next due assignment. Try to sit with your emotions during that time. Try to shut off as much as you can. That's when your body and your mind goes in a rest mode. Maintain certain digital boundaries during the rest mode, of course, but if you can practice it in your daily life, even better. Some regulation for yourself, that this is the time that I'm not using phone, or before going to bed. That is generally advised, that before going to bed, at least 1 hour prior, you should not use any kind of digital devices. So that can be helpful. Then hobbies, I think I previously talked about it as well, that having one or two hobbies would be quite helpful for you. And meaningful conversations. If you think you can engage in a conversation with a fellow peer or a friend or your parents or your cousins or anyone who you think can understand you, that will be really helpful for you. Then there are just three different things that you can do for building support circles. These are three things that are the easiest if you really want to build a support circle, and you think that you need that safe space. So one is identify any one safe person. Of course, you might have more than one. You might have not even one, but identify at least one safe person who you think you can share your thoughts with. Then identify one safe space. This can be your personal room, or it can be a public park, it can be a corner in your house, it can be something in your college or your campus. That is totally up to you, but one space where you feel like you're able to rest, or you're able to focus, sit without having a lot of with utmost concentration, basically without having a lot of distractions. That is very important. A space which has less stimuli is generally suggested. Then one healthy coping activity. This will differ from person to person. Some people like to dance, or some people like to read, some people like to listen to music, but one healthy coping activity is definitely advice to have for building a support circle if you're looking for one. And lastly, it is important to also identify if any of your peers or any of your friends, family members are facing the same. You don't need to be a mental health expert to help them. You simply need to do a few things, and you might be able to help them a bit. So listening to them without judging them, checking on them consistently. If you think they're not feeling okay, then perhaps checking on them after some time, if they're feeling better, will help them. Encouraging them to go for professional help, to seek therapy, or to seek any other physical, mental help if they face any challenges there. Try to avoid dismissive statements. And I think as Indians, we really struggle with this one point. We have definitely, being spoken about it, or we might ourselves have done this at least once, that if somebody is sharing their problems, we tend to say that okay, fine, this will get better, nothing big of a deal. So avoid such dismissive statements. Avoid saying that this is not something that you should be worried about, it's nothing. This not only makes even more harm for them, but will also make them feel like you are judging them, and their problems are not important to you. So avoid that. Then creating emotionally safe spaces. You can use the three tips that I just shared in the previous slides. And support does not mean fixing someone, so don't try to do that unless you are professionally equipped to do so, and just be there for them. So I'll end with this little reflection question that you can think of post the session, and maybe share with us if you want. What is one thing that you can start doing this week to support your mental well-being? If anybody wants to share it, you can go ahead and write it in the chat box. And if you want to think about it later, that's also encouraged. Thank you. I think Hitesh should contribute.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Inayat and Tia, both of you, for all the insights. I hope this was somewhat helpful in terms of just understanding a little bit more about ourselves, about what we are experiencing as a collective group here. And thanks to all 25 to 30 of you for staying right till the end. I hope there were certain takeaways in terms of what can be a few helpful things for ourselves. We often say, take what is useful, discard the rest. So whatever you feel that, okay, this bit seems, I would like to learn more about it or explore more about it, please do so. Just be very mindful about the kind of platforms you're reaching out to, or the kind of support you are like seeking, and we always encourage young people to verify the platform or the professionals they're reaching out to, or their qualifications in a way. And also, we know that a lot of young people are turning to AI, which is yet not verified in terms of if it's equipped enough to provide right kind of support. And we have, sorry, heard of certain unfortunate events where AI has not been able to provide the right kind of help. So do ensure that you reach out to the right platforms and verify their credibility. Apart from that, I personally always used to feel so that when I used to go to the hospitals or seek mental health support, I used to often see a lot of people there who were there to meet the doctor because they were having cold. And I often used to think that when it's about physical health, and if we are in the spectrum of navigating cold or something more, or even something which is in kind of an extreme situation of physical health, in the entire spectrum, our go-to response is to see a professional. Whereas in mental health, when we are facing certain stress where we feel that, oh, this is not impacting me much, we kind of wait till we go completely non-operational away, or it completely weighs heavy on us before we feel like, okay, think I should talk to someone about it. So maybe you want to reflect that how do we provide like a equal response to our health, be it physical or mental, because at the end of the day, we're talking about ourselves only, right? And it's a very funny thing, we always talk about that brain is part of the body itself. So we are taking care of ourselves, and why we have separated our brain's well-being to the rest of the organs for certain reasons over time. But at the end of the day, we're talking about our own well-being. So see how you can create a safe space for yourself and also for people around you. If somebody's talking about mental health, at times we kind of because of certain norms, we may say something which may feel personal to them, or they may not be then encouraged to talk more about it. So see how you can sensitize yourself to support others and support yourselves. Just to conclude, in case you or someone is kind of thinking to seek support, we do have a couple of in-house resources. One, and I has just put them in a chat. One is, this is not our in-house resource, but it's a central government resource, which is the Telemanas helpline, which is free of cost, run by NIMHANS. And if you call on this number, a professional counselor will take your call and they will provide the required support. And second is the Outlive program, which is again a student well-being program in which we have trained students to talk to you in case you are in certain distress or if you're having difficult thoughts. So we are just dropping off a few resources, but feel free to go out and explore and see. Tia shared very helpful insights, and I had shared more about challenges. So whatever feels helpful, please take it forward. And in case you feel like you're not able to understand where to go and you need some support, feel free to reach out to YMH team and to our in-house experts, and we'll be happy to provide any kind of guidance which is in our capacity. But thank you once again for this entire discussion. We are happy to respond if there are any particular questions for us. And if not, there are no better times than closing a virtual meeting earlier than it's supposed to end for the participants. But if there are any questions, we are happy to respond.
So absolutely, thank you so much to all
I
our
think we do have
panelists.
one. Agrima, if you could like to help us in reading that question entirely.
Yeah, sure. So the floor is now open for questions. Please feel free to raise your hands, and when called upon, you can kind of introduce yourself and keep your questions brief. I think
We have one question. I think I'm not able to access the chat here. Okay. How do I separate the feeling that I deserve to relax or go out from whether I'm doing well academically?
I can take this.
Okay.
Okay, so Ria, that's a very common thing to feel, and that's a very general query that we keep receiving from students. But you need to know that it is important to differentiate between two different timings and two different things that you're trying to do. So separate the timing when you're going out for perhaps relaxing or enjoying or any other kind of leisure activity, and separate the time when you are studying or doing something related to your academics, right? And when you feel like there is a boundary between the two, then also feel that when you are studying, you are not thinking about the other activities, and when you are doing the other activities, it is equally important to not think about academics at that time. Generally, we always prefer that when we are studying, it should be with utmost concentration and focus and no distractions. But it is important to know that when you are going out or when you are resting, when you are relaxing, that is also a time when you should focus and just have all your concentration towards that one thing that you are doing. So try to differentiate between the two different things. Try to keep your thoughts separate during the two things, and you'll see a difference then.
Yeah. Thanks, Tia. I think there are a couple of more questions here.
Yeah, Akshit has asked, in anxiety management, what is the line between healthy coping mechanisms and just distracting ourselves from the issue?
Anyone?
You want to take it or should
Uh,
Sure.
Hello. Yes. I think first is the healthy coping mechanism. If we can just talk a bit about that. It's very easy to say that, oh, this is not a healthy coping mechanism, but I think it's important to first identify for yourself what does a healthy coping mechanism look like for you. Like, for example, for me, that would be painting or reading a book. And I think what it helps is to survive the emotion, survive the anxiety in that moment, and gives us some time to deal with the issue in a better way. It is just distraction if we put it in the layman terms. I mean, coping mechanisms, they help you deal with anxiety by distracting your brain technically from the anxious thoughts that you have, and giving you some time to, like, relax and give your brain some time to think about the issue. Tia, would you like to add anything? Yeah.
No, I'll answer the next one.
Next one.
Okay, so to answer the question put by Ishan, there is a very interesting thing that you can do to differentiate between being burnt out or feeling like you're just procrastinating. So when you are procrastinating, you will generally procrastinate about things that you are not interested in doing. Completing an assignment, studying for an exam, doing a household thing, anything that you do not enjoy doing, that is the thing you're most likely to procrastinate on. When you are genuinely burnt out, you won't even feel like doing the things that you love to do. You won't feel like going out. You won't feel like eating your favorite food. You won't feel like talking to your friends. So basically, all the activity, and in the language of psychology, we call this cynicism. So all the activities that you earlier enjoyed, you will not enjoy them anymore. That is one symptom of being burnt out. There are other symptoms, of course, being facing a lot of fatigue, being not just mentally and emotionally, but also physically. Whenever there's burnout, you will have some sort of physical symptoms always, whether it is accompanied by frequent headaches, whether it is not being able to sleep, whether it is sleeping for more than what you are required, whether it is not being able to eat properly, or whether it is eating a lot. So there will be some sort of a physical symptom as well accompanying the mental things that you're facing if you are genuinely burnt out. So I think that is the one thing that you can the explanation can go long and on, but that is the simple one thing that you can use to differentiate. If you're feeling like somebody or you or anybody wants to know more about burnout, you should definitely pick it up from the DSM or the ICD. These are the books that'll give you exact symptomology.
All right, thank you for answering that. This is a question by Vince. How do I deal with the fact that I don't know who I am anymore?
Right. Yes. Sorry. How do I deal with the fact that I don't know who I am anymore? Um, I think as a young person, who I am, it keeps changing a lot. I think it's still changing for me because identities are not something that are permanent in your growing years. And I think early adulthood is one such time. So, it can feel like when you're looking at your life and realizing that many of the things that used to define you, they no longer fit you, or you no longer feel sufficient. So maybe you've spent a lot of time in your life being the helper, being the ambitious person, being the student, being the leader, or maybe a person with a plan. And then one day you might realize that, oh, these roles have disappeared. So who am I? I am not sure. So I think the difficult part is that most of us build our identity around what we do and what we are good at and what other people expect from us. And it does work for a while, but eventually, as I was saying earlier, life changes, your goal changes, your relationships change, and the structures that you've been standing on, building your base on, they do not feel as solid, especially in your early 20s. So, sorry. So yeah, when you say that I don't know who I am anymore, you are, I think, assuming that there is supposed to be a fixed permanent version of yourself, and that is somehow lost. But I personally think identity is not a destination you arrive at once. So it can be an ongoing conversation between what matters to you, what you choose, what you care about, and how would you like to respond to the life you're living right now. So yeah, I think you're still in the figuring out phase, but again, it would, if it's helpful, do talk to a professional, and yeah, they would really help you out with this question as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is this question by Ria. As
Yeah.
you guys said before, sometimes a symptom is not being able to concentrate, not because you are distracted, but just cannot focus. So, how to work on that issue?
Okay. So Ria, yeah. So Ria, what can help you is here that sometimes, of course, it is a real symptom of an actual problem, but sometimes it might also be simply a dispositional thing, or a situational thing, or because of an external factor, because of a personality factor. So there can be many things, that we will have to consider before knowing what exactly is your distraction stemming from, right? So as much as I would love to explore it further with you, but I'll have to know a lot about your like other factors, your social, biological, personality factors, unless it is just a generic issue and not something that is stemming from an actual mental issue, or any kind of a problem. I think you can simply work on it by using simple general techniques. There are a lot of things that can help you. There is Pomodoro, there is Eisenhower matrix, a lot of things that work on concentration and focus and increasing productivity. You can search it up later. You can read more about it. But how to know that if it is a symptom is that it'll never come only with not being able to concentrate, right? You'll always, whenever there is a real problem, you'll always see that there are a few things happening together, right? So you will always notice that apart from the concentration bit, there is something else also that is happening. So you can figure that out. You can take some time to observe yourself, to reflect, to introspect if there is something else also which has changed, and then you'll be able to figure it out if it is simply a distraction or a real problem.
All right. The next question is by Hardik. What to do when your value system shifted or changed after coming to college, but now I want to align it to what it was previously like? Like, I miss my personality and dedication from before when I was doing better.
Right. Again, that's actually again a very common experience in college, because college is often the first time you're exposed to these new experiences, new people, new ideas, freedoms, also pressures to do well in studies. So it's natural for our values and identities to evolve. But the growth does not always mean moving further away from who you were. And it can sometimes also look like becoming intentional towards how you want to be as you're growing up. So instead of asking, maybe, how do I become my old self again? You can maybe ask, what qualities from my old self do I want to bring back into the person I'm bringing now? Maybe just changing the perspective, because that's just assuming that your old self and your new self are two different people, but it's still you, right? So if your dedication, your discipline that you're talking about, those are the qualities that I don't think are lost. And I think they are the strengths that you can consciously reconnect through some like small daily choices, through some techniques that I think you can read up more or connect with someone to learn more about.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering. Are there any more questions to be answered? If someone wants to raise their hands. Okay, so I think we're done with the questionnaire session. So, as we come to the end of the session, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for sharing their experiences, expertise, and wisdom with us. Today's discussion reminded us that mental health is not simply about surviving difficult times. It is about building lives with, which are filled with purpose, connection, and resilience and growth. So, thank you to everyone who joined us. There's an echo. Yeah. Thank you for everyone who joined us. We hope you leave with news perspectives, practical takeaways, and the confidence to prioritize your well being and support those around you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Sorry for that. Just wanted to say thanks to everyone and thanks to the
Thank you,
entire team
everyone.
behind the session. Yeah. Thank you.